So, will Alex Salmond win the day on Thursday? Can the No campaign still pull it off? And even if they do, is the whole of the UK now on the brink of major constitutional change? All questions for the week ahead. And I'm joined now by John McTiernan, former advisor to Gordon Brown and Tony Blair, Alex Bell, former head of policy for the SNP, and Lindsay McIntosh, the Times Scottish political editor. And of course, George and Tommy are still with us as well. And no fighting has broken out either, I'm going to say. Good-natured it is. Right, where are we in this campaign? We got, what, 3 full days to go plus voting day. What is the state of play?
I think the poll of polls is probably quite accurate at the moment. I think we're looking at 49-51 in favour of no just now. I think what's vital for the next week is what these undecided voters do. I reckon we've probably got about 500,000.
Oh, there's still a lot of undecided.
I think there are, yeah, and I think they know which way they're leaning, but they haven't jumped yet. And I think the hope of the No campaign is certainly that what they'll do when it comes to Thursday is go for the status quo.
They're hoping for a silent no. That's
pretty much, yeah.
Well, how do you assess the state of the campaign now?
Well, the crucial thing is the big swing. You know, no, we're definitely out in the lead. The swing has come towards yes. So will that momentum carry them over the line? I suspect it will, because largely it's an anti-establishment swing. And it's people responding against threats from banks. It's people responding against standard Westminster politicians saying we want a new way. So my money is going to be a yes nudges it.
And momentum in a referendum campaign can be even more important than a general election. And the Yes campaign have had the momentum.
Well, this was the week the momentum stopped. So we started the week looking as though Yes were powering into a lead. It stopped, and most of the recent polls show a distinct lead for No.
A distinct lead? I mean, it's 1 or 2 points.
No, well, it's 6 in one poll, it's 8 in another poll, it's 2 in one poll, but it's this weekend's poll
says
show.
The poll of polls, which is quite a good way of measuring it. Is it statistically nip and tuck?
But it was the week the momentum stopped, and it's important to remember that probably about 1/5 of the electorate, and that'll be a quarter of the total turnout, have voted already. They've voted by postal votes, and those postal votes are running very strongly towards No. So there's a whole bank of votes in.
But the postal votes have skewed to the 60-plus demographic, and we've always known that's the one demographic that the Yes campaigns had the biggest trouble with.
Absolutely. The Yes campaign always faced a challenge. Oddly, it faced a challenge amongst 16 to 18-year-olds, and it always knew it would. And it always faced a challenge with...
It always knew it would? I'm not sure that's right.
Trust me, I was at the decision the very day the civil servants made it possible for the 16 to 18-year-olds to vote. We toasted that decision by saying, well, there's a victory for No in that alone. So actually, oddly, we've already known, because the young tend to be conservative, small c by nature. But I think, again, that actually to say that the momentum has stopped when you had a 20-point lead, it seems to me to be an astonishing analysis of a referendum. This is a referendum where the people are beginning to speak, and they will be heard.
Except for one poll, the ICM one, which needs a huge health warning of it because of the size of the sample. The momentum is unquestionably right that momentum all the way through August was going in the Yes direction. It hasn't quite continued to get to the 55-45 for Yes that Mr. Salmond privately thinks will be the result.
Yeah, I'd agree with John there, actually. I think this was the week that the momentum stalled. What we saw with the 3 leaders coming up, they sort of, at the very least, they kept Salmond and the campaign off the front pages, off the television. And we had this raft of economic warnings, which, although they were dismissed as scaremongering by some on the Yes side, I think they will have had quite a lot of traction with voters.
What does the No campaign have to do in the final 3 days?
It's got to focus relentlessly on the undecideds. It's got to keep sticking to the questions about risk, and it's got to keep pushing back on Alex Salmond, saying it doesn't matter if banks leave, it doesn't matter, it'll all be all right on the night. The huge question amongst all the undecideds is about the economy. It's about jobs, it's about currency, it's about business. And that risk is what's going to crystallise in the ballot box on Thursday, and that's what has got to be the focus of No.
What does the Yes campaign have to do?
It has to drive home the fact that the great swing to Yes is motivated by people who want a different kind of politics. And they've decided amongst themselves that they want to change Scotland. And the unfortunate thing is that even though No has had 2 years to come up with a raft of proposals which might address that, they've utterly failed. The Scottish people want powers for a purpose, and they see that only Yes can deliver that.
There's going to be 2 days of campaigning today, then Monday and Tuesday, and then I think the media, the newspapers, I think including your own, will come out with the final polls. That's going to be the poll. These are the ones that will be the closest to the day that the Scots actually go.
That's true. I mean, I think we will see some more polling this week, but what is interesting is the extent to which the pollsters are actually picking up what is going on in the street. You know, we know that we've got a huge number of voters who have never voted before, aren't engaged with politics. What are those people going to do?
Well, I think this, I mean, the third candidate in this election, if I can put it that way, are the polls. They may have a lot of questions to answer on the Friday morning. Now, we were talking earlier with George and Tommy about the Labour Party's consequences on all this. And Gordon Brown, of course, has had a bit of a second coming as a result of this referendum. I just want to play a clip of Gordon Brown during the campaign and get some reactions.
And I say this to Mr. Salmon himself. And until today, I'm outside frontline politics. If he continues to peddle this deception that the Scottish Parliament, under his leadership, and he cannot do anything to improve the health service until he has a separate state, then I will want to join Johan Lamont in fighting him and securing the return of a Labour government as quickly as possible.
Well, that was seen by some people as Gordon Brown implying he may stand for the Scottish Parliament. Whether it's yes or no, is Gordon Brown the saviour of Scottish Labour?
Well, I did a double act in the Usher Hall, a packed Usher Hall the other night with him, and I must say, he was a big beast all over again. He crossed the stage, he dealt with the audience brilliantly. He has a certain presence, Gordon Brown, but he would really have to reinvent himself quite considerably. He's capable of doing that, perhaps, but the man who was the biographer of Jimmy Maxton, the man who pulled together the original red paper on Scotland, he'd have to be that Gordon Brown, rather than the Gordon Brown of some rather more melancholy events later.
Tommy, you both have been critical of the state of the Scottish Labour Party. Rather than looking to Gordon Brown, which may be an interim solution for them, doesn't Scottish Labour have to find a whole new generation of people to reignite it?
Well, I think what George and I are agreed on, and you've got to remember, this question of independence, George and I are passionately in disagreement with each other.
Yeah, I think we got that.
In most other things, we find ourselves in agreement. But one thing is absolutely clear. Scottish Labour's finished. They have lost the heart and soul of Scotland. The fact that we are discussing here, with 4 days to go, an independence referendum that's neck and neck, Labour have failed miserably, absolutely miserably, because they've given up everything they ever stood for. The SNP's picked up. The SNP have just taken on the mantle of a left-of-centre party, and they're picking up support. Well, Gordon and the rest, in my opinion, they represent the past. The yes vote and the yes campaign represents the future.
What do you say to that, John McTiernan?
Well, there's nothing socialist about an SNP who want to cut business tax by 3 pence in the pound. There's nothing socialist about an SNP who don't want to raise the higher rate of tax. There's nothing socialist about an SNP destroying further education so they can give middle-class people free education. The Labour Party is alive and kicking. You can see it whether it's Gordon Brown out on the stump or it's Jim Murphy with his 100 Days tour. Two figures who've both reinvented themselves in this campaign. But they're both kind of, I hesitate to use this word, they're kind of privatised from the Scottish Labour Party. They've kind of rode their own furrow.
Well, Jim Murphy was on the stump because official Scottish Labour didn't want him leading their campaign. Gordon Brown was, I think, kept off the stage until it became so critical he had to be brought back. So I'm not, but I agree with John, the SNP talks left but acts right. And that's before they get state power.
George, that's what's so exciting about this referendum. It's not about the SNP, it's about the people deciding that. And what we heard so far in this referendum campaign is actually there's a desperate yearning in the electorate for real politics, purposeful politics, and for the people to be represented. It is probably to Labour's eternal shame that they gave that role up, and other people are now taking it upon themselves.
How would you assess the state of the Labour Party at the moment?
I think the problem that the Labour Party has, that it was obviously demolished in 2011 by the SNP, and what they should have done since then in other circumstances is taken a real look within themselves, brought forward new talent, brought forward new policies, worked out what they stood for again. They've been unable to do that because we've been locked in a constitutional row.
It is the plan of the nationalists, if they win this referendum, to fight Scotland's first general election as an independent nation as a nationalist party with its own programme. I mean, you don't all go your own ways and join separate. No. Why don't you do that? You've won your main raison d'etre. Why don't you then go left, right and centre?
Well, you're presuming we don't all go our own ways.
I'm asking you.
Well, I certainly will. I personally do not see the function of an SNP after a yes vote. I think it's very clear that there is an SNP under a Nicola Sturgeon, that there is an SNP which attracts votes from the left, which is the SNP for me. Whether that's still called SNP or something else, I don't know. I think this assumption that we're going into a mirror of old politics in a new world is just fundamentally flawed.
Well, that's interesting. Now, let me, so we've got a little bit more final few minutes. Let's just bring in the English dimension here, because in many ways England hasn't spoken in this referendum campaign, but whether it's yes or no, it will. And to give you a flavour of what some in England may be thinking and saying, let's just hear a clip from John Redwood.
Fed up with this lopsided devolution, this unfair devolution. Scotland gets first-class devolution, Wales gets second-class devolution, and England gets nothing. And if Wales wants the same as us, I think they should have it, and then there would be commonality, so that we would discuss and decide in our own countries, in our own assemblies and parliaments, all those things that are devolved.
George, it was clear if Scotland votes yes for independence, that's huge implications for England and the rest of the UK. But it's also becoming clear, particularly after Gordon Brown's intervention, that even if it's no, it has huge implications. And you kind of, I suggest, agree with John Redwood there that there should be an England voice with home rule.
It would be a step too far for me to agree with
I realise as I said that I may have gone out on a limb.
His is the voice from Mars, the Vulcan from Mars. But undoubtedly, my own constituents in Bradford, for example, are beginning to say, well, what about us? All this that's being done, all these extra miles that are being travelled for Scotland, what about us? And Labour would be well advised to adjust quickly on this so that the John Redwoods of the world don't steal the show.
Absolutely. England has yet to speak.
Well, you know something, Andrew? It's interesting when you hear a Labour backbencher in Scotland talk about a command paper. He's not in government. Gordon Brown is going round Scotland promising things. He's got absolutely no chance of delivering. And the people, the MPs in England are going to say, hey, what are you talking about more powers for Scotland? We've never been discussed with that. We've not agreed with that. The only way the people of Scotland are going to get the powers they deserve is by voting yes.
Right. Crystal ball time. You've already said you think it'll be 60-40, Tommy.
I'm going to stick to 60-40 because what we have here is an unprecedented election. 97% of Scotland's registered to vote. The working class are going to vote in numbers they've never voted before.
Right, we got that.
60-40.
George.
55-45, which has been my prediction.
For your
all along.
side?
Yes. And if the this rogue poll, this technically flawed ICM poll in the Sunday Telegraph, which shouldn't have been published in my opinion, it's so flawed, then we would be stretching towards what I'm predicting already. And I think in the last few days we'll reach that.
Come on.
I think if the No campaign can get their silent majority out, they'll be able to edge it.
Now, you think you'll win, but by how much?
Yes, we'll win, but they cannot give up on a second, a moment, or a mile in this last run into. It is that close, and it will be won by the passion and effort.
You don't think it'll be 60-40?
I think I'm going to go for a narrow yes win.
Very well.
I'm with George. It's 53 or 54% for no.
He was 55.
Wow. I'm slightly shy.
I'll leave you to argue about that later. Thank you all for being with us on this special Sunday Politics live from Edinburgh. That's us for today in Scotland. Don't forget the Daily Politics will have continuing coverage of the referendum campaign all this week on BBC Two at midday. On Thursday night, Hugh Edwards will be in Glasgow and I'll be in London to bring you live coverage of the results on BBC One from 10:40 in the evening on a historic night for Scotland and the rest of the United Kingdom. And I'll be back next Sunday when we're live from the Labour Party conference in Manchester. Unless, of course, the referendum result is so tumultuous, even the party conferences are cancelled. Remember, if it's Sunday, it's the Sunday Politics.